Well, as you can imagine, we get thousands of letters from people asking us to help them find their long-lost relatives. But at the end of our last series, we got a letter from a lady who didn't ask us for anything. She told us all about the setbacks she'd had in her life and her determination to overcome them, and her belief that in the end, things would turn out for the best. And they did. Well, it was meant as a letter of hope for others going through misfortunes. And I think she knows who I'm talking about. Yes, surprise, surprise. It's you, Sylvia Mitchell. Would you like to come and join me, please? Yes, bring Joe down as well. It was a lovely letter. It was a great letter. Have a sit down there. Hello, Joe. You're the son, aren't you?
Yeah.
Have a sit down there next to your mum. You sit next to me. Well,
God, I'm gone.
no, I have to share this experience with everybody watching at home, because it was a very moving letter, Sylvia. And I don't know whether you know what was in it, Joe, but she poured her heart out to us and didn't want anything, which was very uplifting for us. And it was gorgeous. But now, let me take you back. 20 years ago, you were married and living in Australia, and you had 5 children, is that right?
Yes.
And sadly, your marriage broke up,
Yes.
and all the family was split up. Now, you got custody of Joe here, and your little girl, Tracy, and your husband got Michelle and Michael. But then the 5th child, who was just a baby at the time, that was David. He was fostered out and eventually adopted by an Australian family. Now, as if that wasn't bad enough, when your little Tracy was just 5 years old, she developed cystic fibrosis, and then she died. Well, that must have been devastating.
It was.
But, I mean, you picked yourself up, just dusted yourself off and thought, well, I'm going to go for it. Yes, and that's when you came back to England with Joe and then made a better life for yourself. But a couple of years later, not so long ago, I mean, you had a letter out of the blue from your daughter, Michelle.
Yes, I did.
And you've been corresponding ever since. And in fact, she came over to meet you, is that right?
She did, yes. Yes, it was lovely.
Was
it was smashing, yes.
And that's when you wrote this letter and said, in your own words, I mean, there is a silver lining. Every cloud has a silver lining. And it's all tribute to you. But I know in your heart of hearts that you've always wanted to meet that little adopted baby again.
Yes.
Your son, David. Because he's right here, all the way from Perth. Here is your son, David. Come, he's a big lad. Come in, David. Well, that's all we have time for this week, I'm afraid. I'd like to thank everyone who's taken part in tonight's show, especially Tessa Sanderson, and of course our very own Bob Cowgies. We'll be back at the same time next week, so until then, ta-ra. Reaching out, holding hands, relive the memories.